I think it's totally hypocritical and it's intellectually dishonest to be pretending that you're on the moral high ground and then misrepresenting facts, lying, paraphrasing, and then taking things out of context. They do financially better when they go after people with
unequivocal responsibility for a serious mistake. Over the years, I made public statements and gave interviews in which I unintentionally misstated aspects of my military service. Most notably, I implied directly or indirectly that had been awarded the Bronze Star Medal with Valor. No. You didn't imply shit. You stated directly, yes, I have a Bronze Star Medal with Valor, and then told a story about how you got it.
So Tim Kennedy has been forced to admit that he's been lying about receiving a Bronze Star Medal with the V device under an apparent legal threat, and evidently it's been a long time coming as he's been getting called out for stolen valor by several military YouTubers for almost 8 months. And it feels almost cathartic because I always thought that shamelessly bragging about taking lives as a Green Beret in order to validate how much of an alpha you are was not only cringe but also extremely gross. And either meant that he was a huge dork who had no ability to read the room and legitimately thought that people listened to his stories with admiration and awe for how much of a badass he was, or just a straight up psychopath who should be placed in a straitjacket. And I'm happy to report that it ended up being the former after all. Not that anybody should be surprised, because taking one glance at his Instagram would instantly make you make the same face that you would make while biting into a lemon.
Did you just refer to a knife as a people opener? Should I not have?
I think every UFC fan familiar with Tim Kennedy would agree that while he was a decent fighter, he was always a cringe lord of the highest order, whose main goal in life seemed to be cosplaying as this universal soldier, Rambo-like character who could bring the hordes of hell to their knees just by virtue of how awesomely savage he was. In other words, a nerd who had some very misguided ideas about what the general public actually finds to be cool. I mean, the guy couldn't even take a USADA drug test without turning it into some hero fantasy about imaginary ops following him around in shadowy cars.
And by the time, he puts his vehicle into park, he has a gun in his face.
I imagine there's
I'm USADA! And I was like, all right, let's go get my piss.
Now, the main two channels that seem to be clued in on Kennedy's fraudulent claims from the very beginning were Valhalla VFT and the Anti-Hero podcast ran by Nate Carnaccia and Brent Tucker, veterans of two elite special operation units within the U.S. Army and Delta Force and the Green Berets, with multiple medals of valor earned in combat between them. And to briefly summarize for us normies why Tim Kennedy lying about receiving a Bronze Medal of Valor is such a big deal within military circles, we can take a look at Carnaccia's lesser Medal of Valor. Receiving it took him risking his life under a hail of bullets in the firefight, then administering medical care to a fallen soldier, compromising his own personal safety in the process, and then going back to engaging the enemy in the firefight. So it's completely understandable why a guy like Kennedy, who not only fraudulently claimed to receive a Medal of Valor that superseded the one that Carnaccia risked his life for, but also fabricated pretty much his entire military career for clout, would rub him the wrong way.
I sometimes just want to list my credentials so people can understand that when I'm saying things, you cannot maybe find somebody on the planet that has more experience in this. From countless tours in Iraq, countless tours in Afghanistan, countless tours to Europe, Africa, South America, counter poaching, counter drug, piracy. I've been doing this for 15 years.
Yeah. So you guys know he spent basically 2 years active duty SF. He deployed not countless times to Iraq and Afghanistan. He deployed one time to each. 2006 to Iraq, 2008 to Afghanistan, and then got out of the military so he could fight in the UFC and went to the National Guard and never deployed again. So no, he's probably got some of the least experience of any Green Beret.
But then there are other times where, we're surrounded on all sides. There's about 30 of us, and there's 400 or 500 Taliban, and they all have elevated positions, and we're all pretty sure we're going to die.
No, Tim was never surrounded by 400 Taliban. His own teammates came out and basically said everything in his book is a lie, and that Tim basically never even fired a shot in combat.
I think I have 12 passports that are full. 12 entirely full passports. There's no more place to put stamps. So, I have Iraq, Afghanistan, of course, North Africa, South America, Europe.
So
that's wild. I mean, he's deployed twice. So he's got 12 months deployed. I'm not really sure how he filled up that book of passports. I mean, maybe you know, when he goes around and does fake photo ops at all these places that he's been to.
Apparently, Kennedy's stolen valor has been somewhat of an open secret for a long time, with high-ranking military officials and members of the US government ignoring the elephant in the room, likely because of the high profile he has developed as a result of his appearances on the Joe Rogan Experience and other adjacent podcasts that raked in millions of views, and the memoir he released in 2022 titled Scars and Stripes, which became a New York Times bestseller in the hardcover nonfiction category. A book that I'm bringing up for a reason, because it's been heavily criticized for being a collection of ridiculous lies. More on that in a bit.
Everyone knows, okay? I've talked to some of the highest level people at the White House myself, told them these same stories. They just didn't care, okay? Because as of now, I'm pretty sure they just think he's kind of a useful idiot. Yes. Wow. Look at that. Yep, it's all of them, guys. Man, Sergeant Major of the Army. Man, that one's, you know, Sergeant Major Weimer, who is a Green Beret, 100% knows about Tim's stolen valor, and he continues to do photo ops. That's probably the most disappointing of them all. They just don't give, because they have no integrity whatsoever, especially you, Sergeant Major of the Army Weimer. Let me just point at you and say, you're the biggest problem out of everybody.
Tim's book served as the catalyst that transformed the largely quiet rumors of stolen valor into a pressing issue that couldn't be ignored, and led to the release of the video, a portion of which you saw in the beginning of this video, where he presented the relatively flimsy defense of people harassing him for clout. Never mind the fact that stooping as low as possible in the name of attention has been his MO for years. The guy literally bragged about not having to deal with PTSD despite supposedly taking the lives of numerous women and children.
I'm asked daily about how and why I don't have PTSD. I'm probably the last person on earth you should ask about this stuff. I have unalived kids and women during war. That's a war crime. Those are war crimes, by the way. So, hey, U.S. Army Command, this guy's admitting to war crimes. You should probably investigate that. I have seen my friends and fellow soldiers burn alive. No, he hasn't. My adult life is filled with the things horror movies are made of. No, it's not. I could have nightmares every night, or be medicated, or be a medicated PTSD victim if I didn't choose every day to make a difference for myself and, more importantly, for the men that died to my left and my right. I don't give a f about how they say we're supposed to heal. I'll tell you how to get better. You stop being a pussy. You hear that? All of you veterans out there, combat veterans, potentially like me, lost friends, close teammates during this conflict, you're just a pussy. You're a pussy if you don't just get over it.
This total inability to stop himself from painting himself as the most badass man in the universe with fictitious bragging put his book in the crosshairs of his very real former captain Travis Warlock, who appeared on the Anti-Hero podcast in the beginning of 2025 in order to defend himself, as he was presented as being Tim's verbal punching bag in his memoir, embarrassing not only Warlock but also the entire US military rank system.
I am insubordinate as f, and I tell him he is a not doing it. I add a bunch more colorful insults about his height, weight, hair color, and anything else I can think of, and close it all out by basically telling him he's prioritizing officer bull over his men.
That didn't happen, did it?
No, not even close. And in the book, he kind of made me out to be a cherry captain. And later I told him, I was like, hey, dude, I had more time as an SFNCO at that time as I did as an SF officer. I mean, you just can't I don't care if you're in a leadership position as an E5.
Yeah.
You can't let that happen, especially in the intensity of that situation.
Yeah,
he would have been left at Anaconda. This would have happened.
Absolutely.
The full 2.5-hour duration of this podcast was spent further dissecting all of the lies in Tim's book, which are too numerous to list here, but generally always revolved around him taking multiple lives and being the most alpha male-ist, sigma male, super soldier fighter guy that couldn't be stopped. But the thing that made me laugh the most was the fact that Warlock calling out his lies doubled as a kindness, because some of the things Tim wrote about were so nonsensical and egregious that he actually ran the risk of being charged with a war crime.
Well, sir, I read this book by Tim Kennedy, and apparently they just shoot people laying on the ground with barely a heartbeat as long as they had a gun around them, irregardless of the Geneva Convention, Article 12, 14, 15, 16, and Rule 47, which Tim, you filleted yourself, brother, when you did that. So I'm doing you a favor by telling everybody that did not happen.
Right.
So the international criminal courts won't come after you. It did not happen.
Tim Kennedy is what happens when you let your deep-rooted childhood fantasies seep into reality and mold your adult personality. There's probably no ill intent behind what he's doing, but be it out of insecurity or some inherent feeling of inadequacy, he wants to be perceived as something that he's clearly not, and in the process of doing so is doing unintentional damage to the reputation of others. So hopefully him being finally forced to come clean about one of his major lies is also the start of him confronting his actual reality and living a happier life void of delusion. But that's just my opinion. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. Like the video if you liked it, and if you want to see more videos like this, hit the subscribe button and the notification bell next to it. And if you want to support this channel further, become a member by hitting join if you're on Android or desktop, or the link in the description if you're on iOS.
Brent Tucker said on his live last night, he reached out to Tim directly, sent him that video, and asked him if he wanted to give a official response on the record, and Tim's response was, the video won't load. Yeah, buddy, I'm sure you're not aware of what's going on right now.